Ready?
Stand up, stand up.
All right.
Best one yet.
Really?
That was
Did you hear
good.
it?
Yes. Good.
You notice the
you-
shoulder shrug? Like, I don't know how to play guitar, but there was this little thing that I'm like, all right, he's into it.
Yeah, right
Dude,
on.
man, you were
I
channeling
thought about
Eddie
it.
Van Halen.
Yeah, Rob's going, oh my God, I got my fix.
It's funny you said that, David, about the shoulder thing, but you also see his facial expressions like a grit. Like,
Yeah.
But you don't realize I was struggling. It's really awkward to play in a very weird seated position that is not the ideal guitar playing position. But, I'm actually, Stephanie, I'm very surprised that you picked Van Halen over Whitesnake.
oh,
But
Whitesnake's okay.
Oh, Whitesnake is great. I thought you'd be a
Van Halen
Whitesnake.
has this better guitar, and I knew that would sound a lot better.
Actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I was expecting more the highway to
What? I know you said something funny, but you cut out. You need 5G. Okay, so hey, welcome to this very special episode of IoT Coffee Talk. It's special because it is an IoT Slam 2020 episode that will be featured on demand at the best IoT conference in the world. And it is hosted by IoT Community. If you're not already a member, you should join. It's free. It's really a great community for learning and sharing. And thanks to Kevin Grant, I call him the hardest working man in IoT. And we really appreciate him having us. And today we're going to talk about IoT scale and promise and what's the holdup. Stephanie, this is your proposal, so I'm going to let you rock and roll with it.
You know, it's funny. Yesterday I was speaking about this topic, and because I think a lot of folks are saying, hey, what's 5G going to bring us? And one of the big driving factors on there is everyone's talking about scale, right? In mass customization or mass IoT or mass manufacturing, and how this might be part of our answer. Well, I mean, it's tricky because there's so many influencing factors as to why we're not scaling. And I think that a lot of it's driven around the fact that everyone talks a really good game about it being simple and that you can just plug and play, but it's not. I mean, every industry, every application, every use case is different. And so when you start to dig into the nuts and bolts, there are specific things that are super simple. And then when you start really looking at the delivery of analytics and intelligence, the things that really make this important, why would they invest in the first place? Those are the things that I believe are the challenges and the hiccups. But from a scale perspective, it just comes down to, it's easy to connect 10 things, but when you start to connect thousands of things, you have a lot of hiccups and problems, and the software may not be able to handle it. The network may not be ready for it. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors, and we could probably dive into quite a few today. But yeah, we are not there yet. But there are some industries that are pushing much further ahead than other industries.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say, I mean, so we're talking about IoT scale and the promise. And if we focus on the promise for the moment and why we aren't there, I think it's simply because maybe the promise was set a little too, or the expectations were set a little too aggressive.
Always.
Right?
Always.
Yes.
Those forecasts, the forecasts that were put out,
Yeah.
they actually include, in many cases, they're including smartphones and tablets and things that I would say that are more in the home. Maybe they're connected things. I just don't think they're important. Well, I actually have a lot of times I have my enterprise hat on. And those numbers are not the enterprise or the government sector side. They're talking about the connected, refrigerator, right? And to me, those don't move the needle like we need. I don't want to see those numbers.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, the thing that's really important to understand is how they actually come up with the value per unit. Like, for instance, with an autonomous vehicle, quote unquote, autonomous vehicle, I don't know how they show up in forecasts because they don't really exist in sufficient numbers. But do we account for only the components in the car that are quote unquote IoT, or do we account for the entire value of the car? And so I think that's really where the problem starts. And I know, Rob, you have a lot of opinions about this because you and I have talked about this numerous times over several glasses of blackberry mojito in Barcelona.
You know what? I am still searching for that $11 trillion that McKinsey promised me. I can't find it anywhere. Or the 50 billion devices that are already supposed to be connected. I can't find those either. These forecasts.
That was changed to 25, right? They cut it in half. But then the 25 billion, where are those?
I feel like you guys are reading from the notes that I looked because I was looking for the same numbers too. And I wasn't going to mention any names what Rob did. So carry on. I'll fill the gaps.
Yeah, I'm not gonna mention who predicted the 50 billion devices because I'd probably get in trouble. But needless to say, we're barely at a fraction of that. Yes, I have a lot of opinions on scale. I think there's still a lot of friction. I think there's still a lot of manual processes. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we've underperformed massively, and we can talk ad nausea. If I think about just the steps let's just say you've come up with a solution and you got it working in your lab and you're like, great, we're going to go do this thing. It's kind of like Stephanie's talking about getting to scale. Some POCs might go well because you did 10 or 20 devices and you're getting the data and you're seeing the charts and graphs and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. And then, but going to 1 million is crazy, let alone 50 billion. There's still, if you're a developer, and there's so many developers, maybe this is the problem. I can't believe I'm saying this. Maybe IoT is still a developer-focused industry space. It's, as opposed to other technology that has moved to more configuration and easy point and click stuff. IoT from the get-go, it was a developer writing code on whatever tiny operating system that's in your little microcontroller on your thing in order to send telemetry over, pick your protocol, pick your data format, all that kind of stuff. And so they're writing all this code, they're doing the security keys, all that stuff. And so I've always imagined in my mind, just that whole provisioning part and deployment. If you have to deploy 1 million devices, is it going to be you and 1 million of your best friends at a long conference room table configuring 1 million devices? If that's the case, and it kind of is, then it's no wonder why we're not even close to hitting our numbers. And that's just one part of friction that's in the system. Obviously there's that developer part there. There's connectivity. Are you configuring connectivity? People go follow the path of least resistance. So they use Wi-Fi, but then maybe later on they find out Wi-Fi wasn't the right choice. If they're outside or moving around, maybe they need cellular, maybe they need LoRa, maybe they need Sigfox, who knows? But sometimes people choose the wrong connectivity. And then connectivity is a configuration thing as well. That's not always going to be seamless. And so managing connectivity, which people probably never even popped in their little heads that was a thing, that they need to worry about that too. And then data shows up in your pick your platform. And then there's a bunch of other code you're writing. You're pulling stuff off a queue. You're putting it in a database. You're sending it through some kind of streaming analytics or batch. So there's a whole lot of developer stuff. There's a lot of database stuff. There's a lot of configuration. There's certainly then you have, if you got your data scientist, things like that. And so when you put it all together, there's a lot of people, a lot of developers, a lot of time. And it's a lot of stuff that, can cause a customer to throw up their hands after a while. They might have been excited going into the project, and then they're like, gosh, this is taking so long. I'm going to retire from the company before I get done with this project. Yeah. So that it's no bueno. So we got to compress all this stuff. People want solutions. They want to flip a switch. That's why they love Salesforce.com and SaaS solutions. I just want to turn it on and get the value.
Yeah.
And that's what they want from IoT, and that's not what we're giving them today.
Yeah. Yeah. So really quickly, let's get the IoT Gigante's thoughts, because this guy is probably like the most real dude in IoT that I've ever met. And by the way, he's not being arrogant by calling himself, if I can properly translate this into English, the IoT giant. I mean, if you actually meet this dude, he's like, what, 6'9"? I don't know how many meters that is, but that's like really tall.
First of all, thank you for inviting me at IoT Slam 2012. Oh no,
2020.
Yeah,
Wrong year.
I think we already had this problem at
we wished it was 2012, Mark.
I think at IoT Slam there was already one talk about how to scale on IoT, no? That 8 years ago, probably. But no, I have been, all of these years, 6, 8 years, trying to see how to reduce friction on companies, trying to connect things to the internet. And it's interesting to see, first things that I found is that the first of all, for example, was the do-it-yourself problem. So a lot of companies started with the do-it-yourself, and they were struggling, first on hardware, second on cloud. I remember finding a company scaling, actually, and having problems with the cloud. So helping them with the things I.O. But then, the hardware, probably it's the most problematic part on the IoT. So hardware is very complex, and you cannot, hardware is super complicated. So, and not only the hardware, then there is a firmware that is as well super complicated. So, and once you have the hardware and the firmware, you have to realize that this is gonna be in the middle of nowhere, and you will need to have tools to send the data somewhere, maybe make some edge computing, but as well there will be a bug on your operating system or on your code, and you will need to upgrade that. So how to reduce friction on that, it's really important. How to help companies to survive on that and scale, it's the most important part. And then the next part that I have been working a lot with a lot of companies, it's how to sell that, how we can help a company to focus on the most important parts, right? On selling this, and how to create business models on that and help their customers to save money or make money. And this is what I have been working in the last 8 years, actually.
Yeah, folks who are listening to this should go back to some of our old episodes. We did that one on business models where you talk about how what we might think is an obvious value sell ends up being very, very difficult to sell, because you have to garner trust, or you have to achieve trust in order for, for instance, a lot of the predictive maintenance scenarios, especially if you're trying to sell to a consumer, or you're providing as a service to a customer, right? And so, hey, David, you work for one of the smallest telcos in the world.
Tiny.
Right? Yeah, you do a lot of work for industrial clients, and you dabble in this IoT stuff. What are your thoughts, man? What are you seeing, and what's holding things up?
I think Stephanie opened up with this already. I think it's the perception of things being held up because of the inflated expectations that were put forward, 5 to 10 years ago, when we were, it was we were using the word connections, X billions of connections, but then the connections would change depending who you ask. We were counting NFC, we were counting RFID, we were counting BLE, all sorts of things. So it was a fragmented conversation. Then, to Rob's point, you had other companies putting out an aggregate financial impact to sectors in the trillions. IoT in this vertical, $1 trillion value, and these are reputable firms. And then you have people playing the space. Wow, if IoT in manufacturing is a $2 trillion opportunity, and I can take, you know, 0.1%, man, I'm going to retire really early here. So all these things, you know, bring us to conversations like these. Like, is it scaling? Because it all depends who you ask. You know, I was looking at, you know, public info here. So in terms of cellular-based machine-to-machine connections of publicly available data, which I research in the interweb, so it must be accurate. Take that. You know, in 2007, Vodafone published they had 50 million. Mark's favorite telco, Telefonica, had 10 million in 2015. Verizon, 29, AT&T, 31 and a half. This is in 2016. So has IoT. Yeah. So if we were to ask these companies and we were to ask the question of like, hey, has IoT scaled? Would they have a different answer? I don't know. And this is without bringing, you know, LoRa and Sigfox and, you know, other unlicensed technologies. So this is all to say, and back to usually, you know, the message to the community of less ask, better questions. Is it a scalability problem, or is it how we've been fed this information that's the problem? So that's where my head is currently at, Leonard.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I want to comment that your facial hair grows in really quickly, because last week I noticed that you had shaved. So congratulations. That's
well, remember, I skipped last week by accident because of a very lovely, you know, family situation. Yeah. But I was thinking that I need to start taking screenshots of each clip so that I can see, you know, the beard move, because it's all the beard. It's nothing here.
Regarding scalability, I think there's an economic element to it, right? If you're scaling and you're not scaling the economics, this scalability is sort of worthless.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, if you tell a customer, hey, this solution's going to save you 10 million a year, but once I scaled it up and all the hardware and everything, it cost you $30 million to do it. They're like, this is ridiculous.
Or they're operating in the red, and they won't be around in 2 years when you need them around for 30 years, and then you have those zombie devices and the zombie services, right? So I mean, I think what you said in the red, I think too many of these IoT solutions are requiring a leap of faith on the customer's part, and them going into the red with maybe a lot of CapEx potentially right up front, and they might be waiting for who knows how many years. It just depends on the scenario before they see that payback, that ROI that they're all excited about. And you know how it is when times are tough, man. People are not going to just open their wallets, and so they need to see that turnaround pronto. You know. Which is why you always hear people, you know, when IoT really started getting hot, I remember when we were at Microsoft and the thinking was, wow, this is going to be a board level decision for a company, because it's going to be such a pervasive thing that you're going to boil the ocean. And that's the only level that's got strategic enough and has the purse strings to do this. And that just didn't work out, you know? And so you finally saw the meter go the other way, you know, the pendulum swing, and it's like, all right, let's just, you hear this all the time, start small. Let's just do one little tiny thing. It's like agile development, right? Let's have a lot of little wins, you know? Let's build the skateboard, and then the motorcycle, and then the car, you know, that kind of thing. You've seen those pictures, that kind of deal.
Rob, so do you think then that, to stick to why is it that we don't scale, is that we don't have a killer business case, not a use case, but a killer business case. Because because, you know, if I think of, you know, a simple industrial IoT scenario where I can pick one manual process, just one, a tiny one, right? And I can remove that manual process so that I can repurpose that human and use his or her skills for something else. That has a very...
You're going to free them up.
Yeah, but let me, in the sake of being specific, because I tell, my kids who are listening over there, words have meaning. When I mean repurpose, I mean if I have a human that has a job that is a repeatable task in a manufacturing setting, and using IoT or other technologies, I can effectively have a machine do that human's process. And I can grab that human that's been doing this work probably better than anyone could do it, but not as efficient as a machine. And I want to keep that human somewhere else in my factory because there's value. So there, if again, just without calling it a use case, there is value because I am using human intelligence to do other things in my factory. That's an efficiency. I have brought in automation to do one task. That is an efficiency. And then we can deep dive into the efficiency. I've solved a safety issue. I don't have to give the machine vacation, 401k, insurance, and I can, spread those benefits across humans. So I think that one of the challenges is that we fail to deliver a solid business case that I can present to the board or to a business unit at lower level. I think that's one of the things that we're missing, and it's causing the reality or the perception of the lack of IoT scale.
So you're absolutely right.
Let me do not agree with what you say.
Yay!
That never happens. We always agree, man.
Right.
No, actually, I can tell you one business case that I think it's a scaling and it's working a lot as far as I know. So for example, it's a smart metering scenario where, it makes sense to digitalize the smart meters with connected devices. And then, you save a lot of money because there is a lot of people involved just visiting house by house manually. So, for example, there is this example of Unavis based in Taiwan and Singapore, who they are installing about 2 million smart meters in Japan. So, and they are trying to reproduce this business case and this use case with other gas and other oil companies, etc. So I see these smart meters as a real business case where it's really easy to scale because this is if the board takes a decision to let's replace human by technology, can go very cheap. The technology, the OPEX and the CAPEX potentially is very cheap, and the technology is already here. There is no rocket science. And I think there is a real business case here on smart metering. On another that I see the potential of scalability, it's on logistics, because there is a lot of stuff moving, etc. I can see potential scaling, but I haven't seen like big projects. I have seen projects with about 1 million maybe devices, no more. So I haven't seen like a full scalability there. But for smart metering, I think it's one of the use cases that it's growing and there is a clear business model.
Yeah, I'd say that if you look across kind of the industry sectors, manufacturing, industrial, energy, those kind of sectors that are a little bit more hard hat, they tend to they're moving the needle much quicker than other industries. And I also take it back to, you were talking about scalability. It starts with the vendors, right? Some of these solutions require more than one vendor involved. So there's got to be a relationship across those vendors. And maybe it's 2 or 3, right? An integrator, maybe it's connectivity and something else. Well, if you don't figure out the business economics from a sales side perspective, and there's no value there, then how do you structure all of these alliances and partners to really go to market and pull together a solution and work together seamlessly to deliver that to the customer? You have to start with the value proposition from the vendor perspective first. If it's not there, then you're wasting everyone's time, because there's no incentive for the sales organization to go out and try to sell these scalable solutions when they can go and sell, like for carriers, go out and get a big contract to sell these smartphones or tablets.
Let me add a bit of poison to this comment, because this ouch. Yeah, well, here's the thing. you take Stephanie's comment of, I've got 4 vendors that need to come together to do this one thing, right? And then commercially, sometimes this is why things don't scale, because which of the, if Stephanie's my customer, we pitch the solution, she's smart, she gets it's for, is several partners that need to, bring this together so that it could scale. But she wants to sign one contract in one geography with one business entity and have very, very clear from a risk mitigation perspective, who's responsible should something not go as promised. And
one throat to choke.
Yes, exactly. One throat to choke. I couldn't come up with that. That is another scalability issue. Rob, are you okay? Rob is usually the throat to choke.
I think he needs CPR.
And then another one, sticking to why things don't scale. So now flipping it to the commercial, the commercials of bringing multiple partners together for the single throat to choke is scenarios where you have a lot of potential different stakeholders that could all benefit. Because when I think, Mark, when you said logistics, I went full on supply chain management, logistics, and you pick a sector, food, we all want food to be great, but there's a lot of, I think it's something like 20 different handshakes from a farm to a grocery store. So while if I'm the consumer, I would love to know provenance. I would love to know, if it's organic or not organic, depending where you sit on that battle. But how do we, from an IoT solution, can bring to the table the farmer, the person with a vehicle that, might just pick up the pallets and it goes to, anyway, I don't need to describe the whole thing. This is the audience here gets it, but that's another challenge of scalability. When you have multiple stakeholders that can benefit from a group decision, and I'll flip the commercial and ask 2 questions. But
there is no business model here on the use case that you mentioned.
No.
There is no business model. This is why you're getting into a use case where the product is very cheap. So tomatoes are cheap in theory. But if you go to, for example, let me give you an example. So like a car manufacturer, what problem they had? They have like the tools, the box where they have very expensive tools. They are getting lost, and they have thousands of that in all the factories. So they want to know exactly where these boxes with the tools that are very expensive and they don't have a lot, where they are. So it's kind of like a location system. And there is a clear business model, because if they don't have this box in the time that they need it, they lose money because they have to stop the factory, etc. So on logistics, I would say that where I saw the scalability, it's on products that are very expensive, or actually on boxes that the box itself, it's very expensive, not the product that it's inside the box.
Yeah, I agree. I was working on a project for one of the IoT vendors, and one of the areas we were kind of exploring was aviation asset management. So the supply chain, the ground support equipment market, all of the things that happen before that flight takes off, and when that flight arrives, all of the things that need to happen. And because what is the industry, what is one of their economic or their metrics that they follow, and that's on-time delivery. And also internally, operationally, it's maintenance. And so predictive maintenance is just a huge factor for that massive asset, that high-value asset. And so there are particular use cases where the economics are there, but the challenges are it's more than one vendor that comes together. It's because there's software involved, there's a platform involved, there's location, and then there's a people factor. When there is maintenance required on that particular aircraft, it's making sure that alerting is taking place and that is done in a quick manner, but there's still people involved. So again, it's complex because there are a lot of stakeholders. There are quite a few entities that are involved. But again, Mark, to your point, that was a high value asset, right? And so there's certain certain economics from a business case perspective that you can filter through and dig through. But those high value assets are I think, kind of golden right now for the industry.
I'll be the dead horse. If we were all farmers and we have friends of the supply chain, there should be a way. And no one say blockchain because Rick will come out of nowhere and just lose his mind. But there should be a way, again, for IoT to resolve the low value item that would have high value of impact across a supply chain, even if it was tomatoes.
Yeah. I think SIs can play an important role in kind of brokering and mitigating some of the risk of bringing together this portfolio of vendors. But from a portfolio perspective, I think it's really important increasingly to start thinking about longevity, whether it's designing for longevity for your solution, but you also need to look at longevity in terms of vetting your vendor network. Going back to what we're talking about before about economically scaling, making sure that these participants that are part of that portfolio are scaling economically, and that later on you're not going to have these gaps and your SI going, oh yeah, those guys went out of business and their platform is no longer supported, or this device is no longer supported. I think those become risks further down the road, and the traditional IIoT universe is used to designing for this stuff because a lot of these solutions are engineered from the ground up, right? And they factor longevity in. These things have to last for like 20, 30 years or whatever.
Right.
For the most part on the industrial side, maybe as you start to get into consumer, you can maybe count on the fickleness of consumers to sell in an entirely new system every 2 years. But I'll tell you right now, with my smart home or semi-smart home, I want to set it up once and I don't ever want to touch it again. But right now I'm having trouble with it and actually causing more problems than the promised solutions.
It must be your coding skills.
I hate it.
Yeah, must be that.
No code.
Stuff. Yeah. No code.
Hey, can I do something new and stir the pot a little bit for a change? No. And be a devil's advocate. So like the other night I was dreaming of IoT like I usually do each night. But then I had this nightmare and I woke up in a cold sweat and I said, oh my gosh, I know why IoT is not hitting all those numbers and scaling. It's because everyone's already doing it already and they've been doing it for decades. And what I mean by that was, did anybody think it was weird when the geek squad of IoT guys showed up in factories saying, we're here to save the day? And the factory, the OT people was like, what are you talking about? Get the heck out of my factory. You guys don't even know what you're talking about. You can't even keep viruses off your computers. There is this other element that says, just those of us, especially if you think of industrial IoT.
Stop broadcasting my network.
Yeah,
it's wired.
Yeah, exactly.
We're secure.
The reality is, if you take manufacturing industrial space, many of these machines that companies make and other people purchase, a lot of them came with their own analytics package with them. Yeah. It's like a closed system. I buy this machine and it's connected to this Windows 95 machine that's showing me charts and stuff in a Visual Basic app. And they use something called Ole automation, which then became OPC. And it turns out that stuff's all over the place in the factory. And so when the Geek Squad showed up saying, we're going to save the day with this IoT thing, you can imagine tell me again what it is you're doing that we're not doing already. We're already getting telemetry off our PLCs. Here's all our fun charts on this. Oh, we upgraded to Windows 98, so we're progressing here. And so I think there's a lot of cases where this stuff's already being done already. I'm not saying it's perfect and it's great, but there's a little bit of arrogance people showing up with horizontal platforms and IoT saying they're going to save the world. When you go into these scenarios, like we all are talking about supply chain, and I agree, IoT can help in supply chain, but I spent a lot of time building supply chain solutions for companies. And if you think that you're going to build something better than what FedEx and UPS and Amazon has figured out for routing packages and making that machine work, you're crazy. There's nothing that you're going to ever dream up that's going to be better than what they're already doing. Or you may have heard of stories of companies building incredible industrial IoT platforms and they couldn't even sell it to their own internal business units. Well, that's a problem. And it's because a lot of times there's super optimized technology already being used to build XYZ components or products that is just way more specialized, and your generic IoT platform and all that stuff could never compete. Again, I'm just being devil's advocate here.
No, I agree, Rob. I agree. You know what I was going to say too is I think there's a big, big problem across our industry, and that is we are approaching the customer with, I have this technology. I have this thing to automate. I have this, and it's all tech, 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 tech. And the customer wants you to lead with, what are you really going to do for my business? And this is so basic, right? This is sales 101. But so many times you're talking about these techie guys, these geek squads coming in, and they're talking so much tech. And at the end, I mean, if you're dealing with line of business managers, people, operational managers, these folks that have been managing that production, that factory floor for a long time, and they've already figured out a lot of other things that you'd be surprised at, right? So we're leading with the wrong conversation most of the time. And I think that's what I've seen with Internet of Things, is that a lot of the folks that are in those discussions and that are pulling in those engineers, it's so overly hyped and so overly technical. But to get that customer and to really pull them in, and is to understand, well, who are some of what are some of the solutions that you're already working within your systems now, and understanding their ecosystem, right? There are big industrial companies that are already doing all of these things for the manufacturing or the factory floor today. If you don't know those people and you don't understand that ecosystem, you don't have a chance, because they're doing things already today that you're trying to sell to them. And so that's a big hiccup in the industry.
Yeah,
that's like, and this is why we have to blame that company that told us there was $11 trillion in manufacturing. Because that's exactly what caused all these people. And, they probably meant good. They're probably good humans. Sure. But they showed up at the factory floor, looked at the OT guy that had been running the CNC machine forever, and told them that they can do their job better. I mean, you understand how offensive that is? That's the problem. Yeah. Part of the problem. It's offensive.
That is offensive.
I want to jump in here really quick. I think we're setting the expectation that the Geek Squad somehow is like doing IoT. So we need to clarify, right? I mean, is it true? This is the first time I'm hearing that the Geek Squad does this stuff. Rob?
They're wearing those blue polo shirts. And they show up with their Raspberry Pi and a multimeter.
Okay, well, I'm getting a little bit low. So this is our signature, hey, we got to wrap up on our show. But now that we've spent a lot of time beating hype on the head with the gigantic reality hammer, I thought we would end the show by having each of us tell our audience, as well as the audience of IoT Slam 2020, not 2012, what we think they should do going in 2020 and 2021 maybe to scale, to deliver on the promise, or at least portion of the promise, kind of change the dynamic that we're seeing here, which is, really kind of being stuck.
I like to think of things from an operational perspective, whether you're in manufacturing or whether you're in retail or healthcare or whatever. I think it's important to really do an inventory of massive hiccups, and we are changing. And I think that the big factor here is it's virtual, digital, mobile now, right? We are working from home. We are trying to push things from an operational perspective to a virtual environment. We're embracing software and collaborative solutions to do that. So from a scale perspective, I really think you need to take an inventory of where you are at today. And I think that there's a lot of things that have changed since 6 months ago, right? Where are your people? Where are your resources? And I know we talked about this yesterday, Leonard. But I think it might be really important, especially if you're an enterprise or even a city or whatever, to really take inventory of what's happening today operationally. What are some of the hiccups? What are key challenges? What are some basic things that you have already in-house that can solve those problems? IoT is not the answer to everything. 5G is not the answer to everything. There are so many options out there, but I also encourage businesses to really hold their technology vendors, their partners, their SIs, whatever, hold their feet to the fire. You need to really be pushing them even harder today than anything, because your business is changing. The disruption was nothing that we planned. The economy has changed. And what those disruptive factors means, we have to be creative. We have to be adaptive. We can't look at all the, oh, woe is me. We got to start looking at ways we can change our own business models. And there's some really cool things out there that you can do today. And IoT is part of that equation.
Okay, great. IoT giant, give us your contrarian view.
My quick conclusion, it's, find a partner if you're not an expert. So if you're a company who wants to get digitalized, find a partner who can help you to succeed on the IoT journey and on the scalability. I would strongly suggest to find a startup who can help you to succeed, because they will take care of that. I'm not saying with that big companies are not going to help you to succeed, but probably a startup, it's they will have the hype to help you find a business model that help you to scale. And maybe in some of the use cases that we say that we couldn't find a business model, etc., maybe you have to start to be transparent and show figures that you don't like to show to your customers, to your partners, to third-party companies that are happening. But that's maybe how it's going to change the world that we are living today. So maybe transparency will be the next step in some use cases. But I would strongly suggest to work with startups to get into this journey of IoT scalability.
All right. David?
We'll list them out. So number one, find the thing that is so core to your business that there's no doubt that you can deliver it and no one knows it better than you. What is your core? What is your mission? What do you do that's best? That helps you identify gaps. So partner where you have these gaps. And last, be honest and recognize that likely the customers that you're trying to sell to, they're very, very smart. They make incredible things. They make things fly. They make things dive underwater for years. They make really sophisticated things and have, incredible amounts of intelligence. So have those your core, and your partnerships enable them to do something better, faster, cheaper, whatever KPI means something to them in their context, not in your marketing context. That is how I think, those are my last words for today.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Rob.
Yes.
Drop a bomb, man. Drop a Buddha bomb. IoT Buddha bomb.
We need props. We need props.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see. Do I have any props in the back? All right, so I apologize. I'm in the back seat.
You're drinking coffee.
Don't
I got
drop
coffee. As you can tell, since I'm in the back seat of a Suburban, I've been grabbed by Secret Service agents, and so that's happening. Hey, let's just stop using the number of connected IoT endpoint SIMs as the yardstick for success. That's the wrong measurement, as it turns out. It's unrelated to anything successful. It's just arbitrary. Someone picked it out of a hat. It's all about solutions. If you are in the IoT business, like if you're one of these hundreds of IoT companies trying to slug it out and make a living out there, I need you to stop what you're doing right now and stop being an IoT company. Find somebody in your company who has expertise in an actual vertical field. Like if you're an expert in upstream oil business, if you're an expert in healthcare, if you're an expert, in natural gas pipelines, whatever it is, be that company, be those solutions, deliver solutions, kind of as Dave was talking about, just, cheaper, faster, whatever. If it's a better mousetrap, if it's something novel, lead with that stuff. And in the background, without you saying anything, if it happens to be connected and adds better value than it would otherwise, that's great. But let's just stop leading with IoT, because it's getting monotonous, and all we're doing is setting ourselves up for disappointment. Lead with actual stuff. Make stuff and be good at stuff and deliver solutions for what people want. And I know it looks weird because I'm on an iPad, and so the camera is over here, but I'm trying to look at Leonard here, and therefore it makes it look like I'm looking over there. I apologize.
Rob is not paying attention.
Oh, hallelujah.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you finish.
Okay. Hashtag dig deep. IoT is not easy. It's a very, very complex, overloaded, overhyped topic, word, whatever you want to call it. What the industry needs to do, whether or not you're a vendor or an end user, you need to really dig deep to find a value for this stuff. I think one of the big challenges that we've had, as exemplified by what we call the POC purgatory, is that the hype and the misunderstanding. It is misunderstanding because people don't look under the hood in terms of these forecasted numbers. There's a misunderstanding that has led everyone astray, and we need to bring that back. And the industry, us, the community, the IoT community really needs to get real. And we need to stop leading, as Rob said, with metrics that don't matter. We need to lead with solutions, right? Exactly as everyone on the IoT Coffee Talk panel has just said. So that's my last word. That's all I gotta say about that. And I need a reload here. So where's my camera? Thanks to the IoT community for having us. Kevin, David Hill, Dr. Tom, thanks for having us. And please become an IoT community member. You will be glad that you did. It's a fantastic organization for practitioners. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is at www.iotcoffeetalk.com. And we would love to engage with you in our weekly talk. So we do this every week. We have a lot of fun doing it. And I want to thank my colleagues here at IoT Coffee Talk. And have a great IoT Slam 2020, everyone. Thanks.